Welcome to the CFB Dynasty Podcast with hosts Matt Knowles, Brian McElfresh, and Doug Gravely.
Hey everyone, how you doing out there? Today is a great day. It's the day we've all been waiting for. It's the day that the brand new college fantasy football season actually starts. There is an incredible number of games today, a ridiculous number of games today.
Couldn't believe it.
On a Thursday night. B-Mac, how excited are you?
21 games. We got top 25 teams playing tonight too, if that matters to you. But loads of fantasy relevant players in action happening tonight. So yeah, man, it's super excited to get things kicked off. We got that. People setting DFS lineups, all that stuff. It's going to be fun.
We're actually running this thing live too. A lot of times in the season, we like to try and get some live ones out there. We've got this shared out on the Discord channel. If you're watching this, please make sure to like and make sure to share. That way people know, because I know over the off season, we don't do the live shows very often. So let me get my little running notes here. So today we got a huge show for you. Again, we're going to be talking about the week 1 rankings. We've got talking about crazy story coming out about QR codes on game day uniforms. We have our quick thoughts about the CFB Masters League Open League that we just finished off the insanely elongated drafts over the last few days. We have our first brisket locks of the season and more. Super stoked. So BMAC, first things first, Oklahoma State has decided to be the first team in sports and football history to put a QR code on the back of their helmet so that people have the ability to donate, scan the QR code and donate to the NIL Collective while watching the game. What do you think about this? What do you love it? Do you hate it? I think I know what your answer is going to be. Do you love it? Do you hate it? What are your initial thoughts about this?
Honestly, I'm kind of whatever. Like, I'm not surprised it's happening. So, hey, if players can, you got some guy that makes a big pick in the fourth quarter, he might get some love. He might get a bunch of love from people at home watching the game. So I love it. I think it'll be funny.
So do you think that it stops there? Or do you think we're going to see something where maybe there's a 1 week uniform where people may not even have their number big? They may just have a QR code on the front of their uniform or something like that. You never know. It's college football now and everything is turned upside down. You never know what's going to happen.
I mean, I don't think the refs are going to allow that one, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right. So yeah, today's going to be a great show. Over the past few days, we had the CFB Dynasty Masters League and Open League drafts. They were slow drafts. We've got 12 teams competing in the Masters League. We've got 16 competing in the Open League. I can tell you right now, just by looking at those sets, I feel like a 12-team Masters and a 16-team Open is going to be more competitive than our 24-team Open was last year. I mean, I look at the rosters and I'm like, man, these people all drafted really, really good.
Everybody feels good going into the season, though, I feel like. So we'll see when those live bullets get flowing and those injury news happens after this week. We're going to have to start using that waiver wire fab. So we'll see. So
BMAC, I'm gonna go to you first. We're going to talk about the Masters League first. What's your favorite part of your Masters League team that you drafted? In the Masters League, BMAC has his own team. I've got my own team. In the Open League, we put in a CFB Dynasty podcast team individually because we need to be able to commish that league. We decided in the Open League that we've got sanctions. We can play in the regular season, but we're not going to go to the playoffs. But we still wanted to be able to participate in our own Open League. We go back to the Masters. What's your favorite part of your Masters League team, BMAC?
So my draft strategy, I went with running backs and receivers right off the jump. So I was able to land Jaden Blue, Mahdi, Cooper, and LJ Martin as my 4 running backs. And then I went Torrey Horton, Ashlock. Obviously, this is not all in order, but at receiver, I've got those 2 paired with Rock Taylor. And then Singleton and Branch, 2 guys that are definitely my guys. And so I love those positions at quarterback. I was probably the last team, or one of the last teams definitely, to take a quarterback, and I took 4 in a row after I kind of grabbed running back and wide receiver and locked those up. So Aguilar and Will Howard, and then went with the Matt Knowles strategy of Veltkamp plus TJ Finley to kind of land that Western Kentucky quarterback. They're both going to be fun.
I was impressed when I saw you do that, man. I was like, that we literally just talked about that strategy last week on the show, and it kind of played out for you the same way. I'm like, nobody took Western Kentucky QBs until late, and you were in the same strategy. I'm like, man, you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, it's one of those, like you said, where both of them are going to play early on. They play Alabama, so I don't expect either of them to play that well. But that competition may go into week 2, and then one of them will probably be the starter after that. So either one of them, obviously, I'm fine with, and the other one will get cut. And then I can pick up another position, because having 4 quarterbacks when the rosters are so small is not ideal. So I'd say running back is where I like it the most. If I'm able to stay healthy, I feel like Blue is going to get the lion's share of those carries. Same with Mahdi, same with Cooper, same with LJ Martin. I feel like I've got a core there of, I'm going to start 2 running backs, and one of them will be in my flex every week, provided that they're healthy, and seeing how bye weeks match up. But that's my favorite part of the team. How about you?
All right, so if I look at my squad, obviously I was happy to get a couple of my guys, Ollie Gordon, Joe Dirt. Joe Dirt's probably one of my favorite, probably if not my favorite receiver this year, just because I feel like he's got such an incredibly high ceiling with the quarterback situation there. I was able to get some guys. You love it when you make a pick and somebody gets mad at you. I got Jonah Coleman from Washington late in the draft, who's going to be the starting running back there. Made me pretty happy to upset all the University of Florida fans. I picked Trevor Etienne late from Georgia. So I feel like I've got a solid squad. I've got Shador and Cam Ward as my quarterbacks. So I like that. I like Will Pauling, Squirrel White. I feel like I've got a team that's going to be able to compete. Will I be able to make the playoffs? Who knows? I mean, everybody's got a strong squad, but that was one of my favorite things about the Masters League draft. BMAC, if you had to pick someone that was not yourself to win it all in the Masters League, simply based on their roster, who would you pick?
Man, I would go Saucy Dossie here. He won it last year. But what you're looking for is consistency at every position. You have guys out there that are going to blow up and have their game. Nick Singleton, maybe he'll get it some games. Maybe Katron will get it the next game. Those kind of guys are great in like a best ball league. But Saucy Dossie has these guys that are just going to get the volume, I feel like. Montrell Johnson, who will be in our news and notes segment here in a minute in a positive way, is going to be a real focal point of the offense for Florida. Hemby as well, Genty, RJ Harvey we're going to see there, but he's got Dart and Jefferson at quarterback, solid. And then Derwin Burgess, Kyron Lacey, Caden Robinson. I like his lineup, and I know he's going to make some good waiver wire pickups because he did last year too. So if I had to gamble, I'm going back-to-back Saucy Dossie. It's probably against the mathematical odds, but I like his roster.
So for me, I can tell you right now, and I'm not saying it because I'm sitting on the podcast with you, but I think that you've got a really, really strong roster in that league, top to bottom strong. I think Josiah with Dragon Masters has got
like Dragon too.
I think he's got a really stacked roster. I think our Mike D squared, both Mike D's in the league have got super strong rosters. Makes me sick.
I mean, Harry Dog though too. Like, to be fair, Mario Anderson, Donovan Edwards, Phil Maffa, Jalen White. He's got some guys paired with, if Utah State is able to overcome all the things in their offseason with quarterback, coach. I think a teammate died recently or sometime this year. So Jalen Royals, and then we'll see. But Royals, along with Kobe Hudson, Jordan Moore, like Harry Dog was up there for me too. And then he's got a couple dual threat quarterbacks that are going to be fun in Castellanos and Avery Johnson.
It's tough. I'll tell you though, if I had a water gun pointed at my groin and they said you have to bet on somebody right now, I think I'd have to bet on your squad. I think your squad is probably right now going to be the post draft number one in the power rankings. That's what I say.
Is Ashlock going to do it for me as my wide receiver too?
Not this week, but maybe other times he will.
Not this week.
Yeah, not this week.
Him and Horton are on the bench.
Yeah. So real quick before we move on to the Open League, Brett Pagney is in the YouTube chat, and he said, thank you, Matt and Brian. Appreciate you doing the shows live. Brian, he said you have a solid team, a good team by Matt too. So Brett's definitely made some comments. I appreciate you being up there and commenting on the live broadcast, man. We really appreciate that. We are going to now move over to the Open League. The Open League, 16 teams. There's a lot of new faces. There's a couple of people from the CFB Dynasty Home League you've heard us talk about. I know Speed, the Good Dancer is in there. William Dong, the Dong Father's in there. And then we got a bunch of new faces, which is really cool. I'm really glad to see a bunch of new guys in there. So BMAC, we can both talk about our squad that we put in. Again, just so that way we have access to the league and we can participate in the Open League. I'm a big fan of our running back crew. For this draft, basically let BMAC be the primary on the drafting. We talked about some of the picks early, but you can only really go into a draft with one strategy. You can't go in with him making a pick and me making a pick, because then you could have a team that's just, not of one mind. So I think that I think the running back crew is super good, and I think that you did a good job by picking a few of my guys too, as far as like Malik Sherrod and Grayson McCall. How do you feel about our overall squad there?
Yeah, I like the squad. I'm looking at Debbie Warehouse too. We've connected a little bit on social somewhere, I think probably Twitter, but it's been a while. So his running back crew and wide receiver crew are freaking great. So this one's going to be a fun one. 16 teams in the draft feels so different than 12. So yeah, having 24 last year was fun. And next year, let us know. We're definitely going to get started early. I took the sword fell on the sword for that one, and getting the late start. We could have easily filled 2 or 3 or 4 open leagues and done it much bigger, and we will next year. But I don't want to complain. Life's been busy. Work's been good.
It's all good, man. We still got more people involved in it than we did last year, and that's what matters. The thing is growing. And remember, this is promotion relegation, so there'll be a certain number of teams from the Open League that are going to graduate up to the Masters League, a certain number of teams from the Masters League that just aren't cutting it. They're going to have to drop on down to the Open League. So it's going to be interesting to see, over time, if somebody's like, hey, I was in the Masters League for 3 years in a row. I mean, that right there is a flag to be able to plant in your ground. That's a big deal, because, we even joked in the draft. We talk about, hey, if you have a bad pick, we're going to call you out on the show. I don't really think there is any bad picks. I think that it's great watching the strategies. If this isn't the NFL where you're going to see somebody drafting a guy that's on the injured reserve in a seasonal redraft league, I feel like everybody did a good job. Everybody stayed away from people like Harrison Whaley, who's injured and potentially out for the year. It was really good watching everybody intelligently draft.
I can't wait to see how the Ohio State wide receivers play out. Every draft we've had, Jeremiah Smith get drafted, Carnell Tate. There's a lot of hype and a lot of expectations there, especially given the comments Marvin Harrison had about Tate being ahead of himself as a freshman. That was pretty wild. And then, of course, Egbuka. So seeing where those fall in, because, there's at Ohio State, there's only so many footballs to go around. Jeremiah Smith, man, to me, looks like Julio a little bit when Julio came out as a freshman at Alabama and just took over. Now, he didn't have a ton in that wide receiver room. I think that was Saban's second year at Alabama when he came out. So he was the go-to guy, and he's not competing against a Carnell Tate or whatever. So we'll see how that shakes out. Can't wait to see it.
I'll tell you, one of the things I'm looking forward to, obviously I'm looking forward to my guys starting tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing how NC State's revamped offense goes. When you're talking about only having back one guy from the offense from last year in Concepcion and every other position upgrading in a very significant way, I can't wait to see what happens with that team if they can stay healthy. But I'm really looking forward to Michigan-Fresno State on Saturday. That could be a beatdown game. Michigan scheduled it expecting it to be a beatdown game, but Fresno State, they have a history of doing well in these money games. Do I think Fresno State is going to beat Michigan? I'm not going to say that, but I think that could be one of the better games of beatdown week, where Fresno State has a chance to do something because they've got a lot of talent as well. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun. The 21 great games tonight, or 21 games to watch tonight, and then there's some great games on Saturday as well, just from a fun fantasy perspective.
Before we go to news and notes, can I give you a little William story? So William from our home league.
Do it.
He there are some comments in, he's got some birthday party to go to on Saturday, and it's going to be during the Florida game. I was going to invite him and some other guys from the league over to the house and have the smoker going, making a brisket all day and trying to get that ready for the Gator game and do some some messy brisket grilled cheeses, and some burn ends and all that stuff. And I'm probably going to do it either way, but William couldn't come because he's out of town for a birthday party. What he didn't tell me, because I told him, I was like, oh man, you're definitely a better friend than me, a better husband, better blah, blah, blah. What he didn't tell me though is his birthday party. So that turned into, oh, that's a red flag.
What? So he scheduled a birthday party for himself on top of the Florida game? Come on, man.
Yeah, that is a red flag and stock down for sure.
Yeah, so I understand. Listen, I got to go to a birthday party today too. I got to drive out to Daytona for a birthday party, but it's at Dave & Buster's, and we've already talked about the fact that the Wolfpack is on. So we're going to make sure that if they don't play it on the TV in there, Cameron and I are ready. We're going to have it on our tablets at the table.
Listen, I don't think I have a friend. I don't think I have a friend that is bold enough to invite me to a Saturday birthday party or a wedding or anything like that. They should already know the answer. If not, they don't know me good enough to invite me over. But yeah, William, that got me. You ready?
I'm ready, man. BMAC, why don't you hit that drop for news and notes?
News and notes around college football.
All right, so we try to go through really quick hitters, some of the news and notes, updated information, injuries. So we got Decorian Clark, wide receiver UTSA. Get out of here. He is out this week. Montrell Johnson, running back UF. He's available with no limitations for the opener. Vic Anderson, wide receiver Oklahoma. He is out this week. Get out of here. Ian Stewart, wide receiver Temple. He is out of here, period, for the entire year. Tore a pec muscle. The pec muscle tear steals his season. Jordan James, running back Oregon, listed as probable. The Ducks leading back is fully participated in practice. His absence last week was just precautionary. Chris Tyree, wide receiver from Virginia, is on the depth chart for the season opener after recently being spotted in a walking boot. Brett Gabbert, QB Miami, Ohio, is listed as QB1 on the depth chart. Indications he's good to go after recovering from a leg injury that ended his 2023 season. Tucker Holloway, wide receiver, Virginia Tech. Not only is he not on the depth chart, but he's expected to miss extensive time. Mac Markway, tight end, transfers from LSU to Nebraska. No word on his eligibility and enters the transfer portal beginning of August. He's on a new team at the end of August. Is he going to play? That's crazy. Jordan McLeod, QB Texas State, officially named the starter for week 1. Is there anybody out there that had any doubt that Jordan McLeod was going to be the starter? That's silly. Why is he even on this list? And then last but not least, Davis Bryson, the quarterback from Kennesaw State, officially named the starter for week 1. We will try to make sure we have got any updates that you need to know on the CFB Dynasty site, whether it's on Discord, whether it's on Twitter. We're going to make sure you've got those notes so that way you can set your lineup the best you can, because we want to help you take your fantasy football experience to the next level. Boom.
Boom.
How's that for the news drop for week 1 of the new season?
Perfect. Yes. And many more of those to come. So that's awesome. That's going to be fun to see what happens this weekend, specifically the news that affects me was Montreal Johnson, of course, being not limited whatsoever for the opener. Hopefully he's in shape and whatnot. But I'm so nervous for that game. I go between nervous and excited. I don't know. I'm a very much. I don't have a lot of emotions in real life, but when it comes to college football and Florida football, this is where
Well, I
it
feel like the
happens.
last couple of years have kind of been a beat down for you emotionally when it comes to Florida and expectations of what they
Couple
put on the
years,
field. The
jeez,
second, it's been rough. It's been rough, man. There's
10 years.
been some rough years, man. Um, that being said, though, we could sit here and we could postulate and we could commiserate, but that's not why people are watching this podcast. People are here because they want to know about the Week 1 rankings for CFB Dynasty. So before we get to the rankings, BMAC, why don't you let everybody know how these rankings are actually determined by
Yes.
CFB Dynasty?
Yep, that's a good one. So when you're logged in on the website, you can get to these a couple different ways. If you go to the rankings CFF, all those new rankings posts will go there as soon as they go live. I am gonna try to get email back up and running because it was nice when all the subscribers would just immediately get an email as soon as it published. But we do push them out on the socials. It's about the only thing I do on the socials, to be honest. And then you can also get to them under news and articles, recent posts, and everything will go there. Essentially, we'll have Sunday, we'll have waiver wire gems, and by Tuesday, I try my best to get player rankings out. It took a little longer this past week just because it hit me like, oh snap, my drafts are still going, but I should be working on rankings. So I did that and we got them out yesterday. And then we'll have, yes, our live rankings and lineup prep podcast here on Thursday. And of course the Discord all throughout the week. Rankings. So, all right, once you get to them, what do these things mean? And I do want to talk about another tool that I have some questions on for you guys, and you can let me know what you think would be best. And I want to get your feedback too on that, Matt, just live here on the show. So starting over in the left is obviously RK, just the rank, the player, the team logo. H/A is just whether you're home or away. And for a lot of these guys, you'll see home and you'll see the opponent be someone they're going to beat down. So you got the opponent column there. We have year-to-date fantasy points and then fantasy points per game columns. What will be added here? Maybe, based on the feedback that I get from you guys. What will be here potentially will be the last trailing 3 weeks. But I have a different solution for that this year because I do think that data is super important. Then we'll have the spread and the over-under. If you're not familiar with gambling, it's just the Vegas line difference between what you see here. We got Byron Brown number 1. We've got USF against Bethune-Cookman, and USF is projected to win by 40.5 points. The over-under for both teams combined is set at 60.5, which would put the projected points for at 50.5 points for USF, and for Bethune-Cookman 10. So those metrics are super important for me. Like long ago when we were starting in college fantasy football 17, 18 years ago, I knew the SEC, I knew the big programs around the country. I didn't have a good grasp on, what do I expect from Tulsa against Louisiana Tech and all that stuff. And so I would get shocked sometimes when some team like Tulsa, who had a great offense, would play against a team like, whatever, some lower level school, but that has a really good defense, or just overpowered them in general. So this is a good gauge to understand how many potential points are available for my guy. And this is how I started setting my lineup. So we added this to the rankings years ago, and I need it before I can set my lineup every week. I have my lineup set, on Sunday normally, not this week because we got games on Sunday and then another game on Monday. But normally I've got my lineup for the next week set on Sunday. And then as I go through this process and get educated on what the data tells me, what's the consistency of my player been like recently, what's the over under, the, mostly the projected points for that team. It's not normally like this where it's like, oh, everybody's playing a beatdown, so everyone's going to score 45 to 53 points this week. Normally, it's a pretty big gap. So if you have, let's say in week 3, you've got Nico playing against a better opponent, and you've got Avery Johnson playing at Utah or something like that, it might be 2.5 more touchdowns that Tennessee is going to get over Kansas State. And then you've got to weigh that and see, all right, do I want to start Nico? He's going to have more opportunities to score. And so you kind of put the math in your favor. And over the course of the season, having math in your favor, more wins, hopefully on DFS, you're winning more money, and all that stuff. But this is where it's at. Before we actually get into the rankings, can I show you the idea of what I have? All right, you're muted accidentally, of course, but I can see a positive.
You know what? I think you can. I think you can show us.
All right, so I want to do a color-coded consistency chart. So this is using last year's data, for those of you on YouTube, where you can see Jayden Daniels, he finished QB1. This is the rankings as if we were going into week 13, and you can see kind of how many points per game he has. And I have an alternate version of this that I want to show you, and then just get your feedback on it. So essentially, the higher you are, the more green your total is. The lower you are, the closer you get to the red color, the worse. So you can kind of see someone's fluctuation. Like Jayden Daniels was incredible all year. He had one red number, and that was because it was a bye week. But then you have others. So you can see, Jordan McLeod, how probably had a difficult schedule or whatever early on, 22, 19, 13. And then he takes off 58, 39, 33, 31. And this is how you can kind of educate yourself on how a player is trending against some of your other players. And a trend matters a lot in college football. So you can see that too with Milroe, where it's like, it was his first year starting. He came out with a bang with 49, but then he goes to 25, and then he goes on a bye week, and then he goes to 15, 26, 29, 29. He's still figuring things out in college football. I think his consistency metric is going to be a lot better this year with the new staff, but then he goes out with a bang, goes for 50, goes for 53, and then ends with 27. So he's a very volatile player. So if you're starting him every week, it's not great for your team. That's a position you've got to nail. So the alternate version is, instead of the actual numbers, which I feel like you pull that up in Fantrax and you can see the actual numbers. Here is the where they finished. So like Jayden Daniels, this isn't color coded because QB61 isn't a number. It's not recognized as a number in Excel. So I have to take that QB portion off with some sort of a formula. But essentially this will tell you, and I'll make sure it's color coded like that too, although you can't see it here. So Jayden Daniels week 1 was QB61. So you can see he was, likely a disadvantage to start him week 1. But then he goes QB4, QB8, QB9, QB2, QB1, 10, 2, and then he had a bye week, and then 10, 1, 1. So the consistency metric for him obviously is off the chart, but then you can see if he's placing in the top even 8 or 9, it's very likely that you're getting an advantage at that position over whoever you're playing against. And then it'll be the same, obviously, for running back, wide receiver, having a chart like this that we can track over the course of the season. what's your initial feedback? Which one do you like better? That kind of thing.
So my initial feedback is this. You're talking about this is subscriber content. I don't think there's a problem with having both of those things available if it doesn't overburden you to be able to just run those spreadsheets. I think that there could be value to both things. Somebody might feel like, hey, seeing the actual numbers is good, seeing where they fall, because you might have a quarterback that performs lower than his average in a week, but everybody performs lower than their average in that specific week. Or like, as you said, week one could be all the bully beatdown games, and maybe they performed great, but that's because they were playing a team from, Division II or something like that. So I think they both are good. I feel like for me, the one that's got the color coding on there is going to be more useful. I think there might be a couple of other things if it was a possible to be able to adjust. Like, for instance, if there's a bye week or a guy's out injured, maybe not make that be the red, maybe make that be like gray and not considered into their ranking, because that basically everything that's on their bye week is going to always be set at 0.
Right.
So maybe that might be one thing if it's possible. But I think that's I think that's the kind of information that the shrewd people that are going to CFB Dynasty for information are looking for, because that's not something that's being provided by other sites.
Yeah, instead of just having the rankings to go to, I'll include these consistency charts. Obviously, it's not needed the first couple weeks of the season, but as we get into it, after week 2, I'll probably put those on that same post. And the consistency metrics, I think, are going to, help tell a story, help you set your lineup, help you understand in DFS how people are trending, all that stuff.
Well, good stuff, man. I think those are going to be great additions to the site. And that just goes to show why you want to be a subscriber, because that's not information you're going to be able to get on the free site. You're going to have to be digging in. You might get a quick look at some of that stuff on the pod. We probably aren't going to be pulling stuff like that up too often on the pod, because, why go be a subscriber if we give you all that information right now?
Yeah. So this week, like every other week 1, it's we've got some amazing matchups to watch, and I can't wait. Florida, Miami, USC, LSU, Penn State, West Virginia, all that stuff. But for fantasy purposes, it's just so many beatdowns. Like, you've got
there's only one team in the top 12 on quarterbacks that's playing an FBS opponent or FBS. Yeah. Everybody is playing somebody in FCS. To me, the most difficult thing in week 1 is how long is your starter going to play?
Yes.
If you've got Byron Brown, is he going to play to the end of the first half? Is Bethune-Cookman going to come out and play the half of their lives and keep it close and keep Byron Brown into the second half, which can be good for fantasy? I think the biggest thing is, are you going to be able to get points from your guy? I think that Jalen Milroe being at 6 against Western Kentucky, he probably has the best chance of staying on the field. That doesn't mean that Western Kentucky's got much of a chance of winning that game. But Western Kentucky has a chance of putting up a lot of points just because they are Western Kentucky, which would in turn mean Jalen Milroe might still be playing after halftime, which means he might be able to get more stats. So, yeah, I think that's the kind of thing you really have to think about in these early weeks is how long is your guy going to play? And is he going to be the guy that's going to get the points? You might have a quarterback and your team could be up 35-0 at the half, but it could be all rushing touchdowns.
That's right. And then it ruins everything. 100%. Yeah. So that's what it is really for quarterbacks. I think it's going to be, this makes it easy / also difficult to set your lineup. It's one of the most frustrating weeks of the season to me. I don't take a lot out of it. I hope to kind of luck out with a win, but everyone's going to have good lineups with beatdown potential here this week.
All right, so unless there's something else you want to call out on the quarterbacks there, let's roll down to running backs. So
here we are. Giddens number 1, Taj Brooks number 2. Just both of those teams are projected to score in the upper 40s. And then you've got Genty and Gordon, who will probably end up being staples at the top. We'll see. Mahdi, Devin Neal, Jaden Ott, all these guys are projected to score like these teams, are projected to score like 39, 47, 52. It's ridiculous. And yeah, you're just going to be playing that. I hope my guy scores before he gets benched game. One of the omissions that I did get asked about via email was Amarian Hampton.
Yep, that was my thing too. I looked at this list. I'm like,
yeah,
you're talking a consensus top 3 running back across all drafts. Doesn't even make the top 40 for this week. B-Mac, justify this.
So you can play him, and he's a feature of the offense. And it's there's so many. So you got Ulysses Bentley as our 40th right now, and Ole Miss is projected to score 51. Jaquinden Jackson is 39th. Arkansas is projected to score 53. I think UNC is projected to score 3 to 4 touchdowns, which is obviously a lot less than a lot of these other teams. So if you have Hampton, it's going to be hard as heck to sit him because you drafted him in the first round, more likely than not. So it's not like he's a bad start. He's a really good start. There's just a lot of really good starts this week.
Well, and to be honest, part of it comes down to tonight. North Carolina is playing. They're playing against Minnesota. They have, outside of the obvious things like, you don't really want to be playing Fresno State guys versus Michigan. You don't really want to be playing Hawaii guys this week as they're playing against UCLA. That's, he does have one of the more difficult matchups, all things considered in week 1. So I know that's part of the reason he dropped off. And the other thing to consider too, these rankings, most of them go based on the data. There are some things where once the data comes in, and BMAC has talked about this often, you might have the data come back, say, hey, the data says this is what it's going to be, but then there is a little bit of human element. Hey, I don't really like the way that the data came out on this. I think this guy should be a little bit higher. But if the data said that he's not in the top 40 this week because he's not in a beatdown game this week, it's no different than Malik Sherrod playing against Michigan. Malik Sherrod is somebody who's going to be near the top of the list all the time, but not when you're playing on the road against Michigan. So you just got to keep that in consideration.
And these are all things what the community's for. Like if you have something like that you see, hit me up on the Discord, at me anytime. I'll do my best to have a quick response, and it's always going to be a data-based response, just like all of my marketing clients. So I think that this is just going to, it's like you said, Matt, it's just one of those weeks where so many beatdowns, like there are so many good starters. You got teams like Liberty. The Liberty's going to score a ton, but you've got like throughout the year, you've got low-level teams. Auburn's projected to score 51 points this week. That's just not going to be the case most of the season. So everyone's just got a good matchup. So as you look at receivers right now, you got, Burden, McMillan, Tez Johnson, Royals, Hobart, Evan Stewart, all up at the top. Just, again, an array of beatdowns. So I think that just makes sense. It's just one of those weeks. And then we got tight ends, we got kickers, we got defenses listed up there too. But all there, ready for you to consume. And then as you have questions, let me know. Again, we're going to shoot to have these out on Tuesdays every week this season.
Yeah, really. Okay, so we just got a question on the live YouTube stream. Let's go to it. We're going to do questions later, but let's hit this one right now because it's just relevant. So Nez83 says the weekly rankings always be the top 40 for each position. Maybe for more deeper leagues, I used to use your draft cheat sheet. For my team, I have 2 players within your top 40 for week 1. So the lower ranked players, I'm kind of want to know who to start over from the bench. So they're asking, will there ever be a time in the weekly rankings that they're going to see more than the top 40 because they might have somebody that's lower down the line?
Nez83, the answer is yes. Will it happen this season? I don't know. So I'm working with a high-level developer, and we are working on an algorithmic rankings tool, essentially taking everything that I do manually and building an algorithm that will actually end in a point projection. So as far as setting your normal CFF lineups, that's going to be perfect. But it's an amazing DFS tool where we'll have this algorithmic point projection, and then here's the FanDuel price, and then here's the DraftKings price, and then where do you get the best value, and value per player. So that's the future. I don't have an answer as to when that will go live. But I typically will do, top 40. Maybe some weeks we'll go top 50 per position. And then start sit questions after that would be the way to go.
I think that sounds great. I know, in years past, I think we've gone a little bit deeper than 40, but this week is tough. When you got all the beatdowns, it's kind of tough to really be able to say, here's your guy that's, going to be 48th over 49th when you got these kind of games in there.
Right.
Yeah, that was a great question. That's the kind of stuff that we want from you guys, whether it's on the Discord, whether it is in the live comments. And again, something we didn't state earlier, if you are in the CFB Dynasty Open League or Masters League, we just put up some sub channels on the Discord. So there is a community chat just for Open League, community chat just for the Masters League, alongside of the start sits and all the other questions that are out there. So that's the rankings for week 1. Super excited about being able to get into this season. I'm, done enough drafts, done enough mock drafts. I'm time to actually get this thing started and see if the guys that we like are actually going to be really good.
Nez also followed up, new to Fantasy CFB, learning how this hashes out. Man, I hope you have fun, because really that's what it's all about. And if winning money too, if that's what you do. But I do hope you have fun, because I know I do. And we have a healthy 17-year home league that we've been running, and it's just a blast. It's just so different than anything you could imagine in the NFL. It just makes you feel more like a GM, and there's different types of leagues that you can run. So I hope you have a ton of fun this year, man. And
I can tell you one of the things I really like. I mean, there's
here to help you.
Yeah, far too many leagues. I feel like I'm in far too many leagues this year, but that's part of doing something like this. The transition from just doing pro football, fantasy football, to college is one of the greatest gaps that you could ever have, because it's such a different animal. That's what I thought before. But I can also tell you that the way that the CFB Dynasty Home League works, where it's a college to pro dynasty with limited pickups in the season, with massive rosters, where we're having to scout guys that are coming in off the freshman watch lists and things like that, because you got to get some of those guys. I know our home league drafted with the top 6 positions were all freshmen, top 6 positions in the draft. That is one type of league. You go into the CFB Masters and the CFB Open, freshmen weren't getting picked until like the 10th or 11th round. I mean, it's such a completely different monster. You have to completely draft differently. I can tell you that Mike Davis, you've heard us talk about him a lot. He is one of the best fantasy football players that I know. The guy has always got an incredible team. He builds an unbelievable team from college to pro. And I think this is one of the first years that he's done something like the Masters League. And he was messaging me offline. He's like, this is so different than drafting in our home league, the Campus to Canton, that it was interesting seeing somebody that I look at and say, this is one of the best guys out there, one of the true experts of fantasy football. And he was like, wow, this is just a really, really different animal. So it's fun being able to experience it, get in and know that, hey, you know what, you might be new into the game, but you've got just as much a chance as anybody else, because there's so much you can do right in college fantasy football if you just play your cards right.
Yep, exactly. Do we go questions, or are we going brisket lock?
First thing we got to go. It's the start of a new year, start of a new season. So that means it's time for week 1's brisket lock. B-Mac, hit that drop.
It's time for the brisket lock.
For those of you that don't know what the heck the brisket lock is, B-Mac is well known for his love of the brisket. B-Mac even talked earlier about having guys over so they could eat some brisket that he makes on his smoker out there.
Specifically a messy brisket grilled cheese.
So the brisket lock is this: is risk it for the brisket. What is the player that BMAC would risk it all for that he's going to perform? He can't be somebody that's at the top of the rankings. It's got to be somebody that's down the line that is probably going to perform over what the rankings say. Who is the guy that BMAC would risk it for the brisket? Who is your brisket lock for week 1 of the 2024 season? BMAC, hit it.
I'm looking at a long touchdown from Carnell Tate this week. He has big goals, and I think he's definitely got the tools to do it. And he's been super motivated to hit that 1,000-yard mark as a wide receiver at Ohio State, and he should be able to do that if he can beat out, Jeremiah Smith, Egbuka, and other guys that he's played with since before college, actually. So I like Tate a lot in this offense. I think Jeremiah Smith, Egbuka get a lot of the attention, and people are forgetting about Tate. I think he's going to set the tone week 1. They're playing Akron, so they're going to be able to they're going to try and get the ball around, but I think Tate early gets a touchdown. Who you got?
All right, so there's guys that are my guys coming in. You've heard me talk about Joe Dirt a lot. I'm psyched about Joe Dirt. There are other guys that really just don't make it onto your radar until you start drafting, and then you're like, whoa, this is a guy I want to know more about. And Kyle Monangai from Rutgers is not really my brisket because I feel like he's ranked a little too high in the rankings. But our guy Gordy Miller drafted him in our home league draft and just kind of put him on my radar. And so I've been doing a lot of research on him, a lot of watching highlights, and I really, really like Monangai from Rutgers. He's our number 19 running back this week. I feel like he's ranked a little too high for me to be able to say is my brisket lock, but that's something I'm going to be watching. My actual brisket lock for this week is going to be Jamal Pritchett, wide receiver from South Alabama. He was my guy last year. He helped me to finish near the top in the open league last year, but he was the number 2. He was definitely the second fiddle at South Alabama last year. The number 1 guy transfers out, Colin Lacey, and he's injured now. He's injured where he went to Louisville. But Jamal Pritchett is now the unquestioned number 1 at South Alabama, and I feel like he's our number 30 wide receiver this week. I think Jamal Pritchett has a chance to blow those numbers off the rails there. One of the things about Pritchett is he gets an absolute ton of targets. You always want to be looking for receivers and tight ends that are getting a lot of targets, because if they're getting those opportunities, that means they have a chance to get a lot more catches. That's why I talk about Joe Dirt all the time. The man's getting 13 targets in a game and getting 13 receptions. Jamal Pritchett is the same kind of guy. That is who my real brisket lock is this week, with the guy on the bench being Kyle Monangai from Rutgers.
All right, great. All right, next we'll get to questions, and I think that closes it out for us.
It sure does. It sure does. All right. We're gonna go.
Start 'em or sit 'em.
All right, so we're gonna go. The first question we got was in our CFB Dynasty open chat from our guy William Dong. He asked you, BMAC, when you drafted, he's like, why did you pass on Eric Singleton, wide receiver from Georgia Tech? Isn't that a my guy for you? Why did you pass on him in that open league draft?
He definitely is a my guy. And I had an answer, to be honest. And then I forgot my answer because I did answer them.
Well, I know what you said in the chat was, what was his ceiling with the quarterback that he has this year? Dong asked if the performance this past Saturday had any kind of impact on there.
Oh, that's right. No, it did not. So that his performance definitely did not impact that whatsoever. He was missed on a touchdown that he should have had against Florida State. Like, he had a nice corner route, and it was just overthrown. I think it was overthrown by Haynes King. That's something they're going to nail down when they get their timing. It was week 1, in Dublin. So I liked how they used him. He was in motion a ton. He's going to get a lot of touches. And Singleton, man, he looked the part. So week 1 didn't affect it at all, or week 0, sorry, didn't affect it at all. I still love Singleton, and I have him in most leagues. So that might be the only one that I don't have him in, to be honest.
Well, and I know that you did have him in the queue. You had him and one other guy, and I think it came down to did we need another wide receiver or need a running back at that point? And that was the reason why. That was what I took it as. All right, so we got a bunch of start-sit questions here. Kason Hightower on the Discord, who's also in the Open League, says Kobe Hudson versus Jonte Cook versus Jaden Higgins can start 2 of the 3.
Man, this one hits at home a little bit because I have a question for Matt involving Jonte Cook. I have really good feelings about how Cook can be wide receiver 1. And boy, for Texas. And boy, that made it worse last week when I read an article about one of their beat writers saying something similar. So it could be a little bit of confirmation bias for me. So Kobe Hudson and Jaden Higgins is probably who you should start. But out of the pure excitement for week 1, I would probably start Hudson and Cook. So that's my unfiltered thoughts there. So again, do what you should do, but I would probably do Hudson and Cook.
So he also, man, Kason Hightower, he's asking a lot. He basically wants us to set his lineup.
Good.
He's got Avery Johnson versus Dylan Raiola versus Nussmeier can start 1 QB. Honestly, I'm going to go Avery Johnson on this one for 100%. Week 1. For week 1, you got to go with the known commodity. You don't know how Raiola is going to be in his very first start. I think that Avery Johnson is going to be the guy out of that lineup. That's who I go with in week 1.
100% agree. Raiola would be a fun start. I think I'm playing against him. Danny's starting Raiola against me, and he could have a big game. Nussmeier could have a big game. I mean, USC's defense was anyone playing against USC's defense last year was a must start. But I want to see it. I heard a lot about turnovers over the course of fall camp with Nussmeier, and Raiola is probably going to take some time to get going. Avery Johnson, 100% who I would start there. We have one question from me to you, Matt, and then I had one other question that popped into the YouTube questions here. Yep. So I've got Torrey Horton, obviously first round pick. Love Torrey Horton at Texas. So when you look at the data, Colorado State's projected to score 14, and he's their feature guy. So I could see a path where he goes, 11 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown, even though the matchup is horrible. Or you start Jonte Cook. Sark has said he's going to play a lot of wide receivers. I hope and think Cook will end up taking over wide receiver 1, or Carnell Tate. Which one of those 3 would you start?
For me, week 1, this is a super easy decision, and that's Torrey Horton. And here's why. I say you have to throw the data out in this respect. Torrey Horton is probably somebody that went in the first round of your draft. I know that Torrey Horton was picked in the first round in a couple drafts that you're in. If you bench the number 1 receiver on your team in the first week, are you going to be more upset with benching that guy in the first week, or are you going to be more upset if he plays and maybe a guy that is your number 2 or number 3 you don't start? So I think Torrey Horton for week 1, you've got to start, especially like you just said. He might be the guy that's going to be a team that's going to be behind, so he's not going to come off the field. They're going to be trying to work out their offense and figure out ways to get good things happening there. I can't see Torrey Horton not being a guy that's still going to get, even if they get blown out, he's going to get tons of targets, tons of receptions. I think that's the guy you've got to go with, especially because of where you drafted him.
Well, I put that question in the Start Sit channel too in Discord. Let me know what you guys think. You and Brett seem to agree, and now
Brett's a smart guy. Good job, Brett. Brett, you're a smart dude. That's what I'm talking about. See, we're linking up, man. We're linking up.
Got a decision to make. Week 1. Here we go.
All right. So I see this question. You talk about the question for Big Red Fever.
Yeah, I put it up on the screen here.
I feel like this guy's calling me out right here, because if you've watched the pod, we'll read the question first. So what happens if Colorado loses tonight? Year 2, yet another roster overhaul, no high school recruiting, no development. So if you watched the podcast last year, I have been a Shedeur Sanders shill, because with having Dion as his coach, Shedeur is always going to get – Shedeur's not getting benched. None of Dion's guys are getting benched. I think You mean, can Colorado lose? Yeah, just like could Florida State lose to Georgia Tech in Ireland? I mean, not a lot of people. Only Sheamus was the only person from WWE that picked him on the announce table last week to win. Everybody else picked Florida State. Could Colorado lose? Yeah, maybe. But I think that Colorado has done enough to upgrade that offense to keep Shedeur Sanders upright. They've got more weapons at wide receiver. I think that they've got an upgraded offensive line. If they can keep him upright, no more broken back issues, no more cheap shots on Hunter, things like that, I think that Colorado wins that game. I don't think that they're going to lose, but let's say hypothetically they lose tonight. I don't think that that's going to be as much of a roster overhaul as you might think. I think that they're going to let it play out because I do think they're going to have a noticeably better team. What do you think, B-Mac?
Colorado's win total this year is 5.5. And first of all, I'll say, so they're playing North Dakota State, who's freaking great at football. So, and also one of the most epic college game days ever was at North Dakota State. I've actually had the privilege of traveling there a few times for business, but man, those people love football there. And that's not going to be one where they roll over. It's not going to be one where this thing is over in the first half, I don't think. So it's a 9.5 point spread. Colorado, man, if they lost that game, though, if that's the question, if they lost that game and then they go at Nebraska and then they go at rival Colorado State, that could be a really, really bad start. Like, you could see the wheels falling off after 3 weeks of the season, maybe. And it doesn't get a ton easier. Then they play Baylor, and then they're at UCF before their first bye week. So then they play Avery Johnson, then they play Arizona. It's not an easy schedule for Colorado. So I think losing week 1, I disagree. I think it's massively detrimental to that whole team and that whole roster.
I feel like it all matters how the game goes down. If it's North Dakota State and it's a tight game and they're competitive in the first 3 weeks, it's one thing. You go back to last year, the Stanford game for Colorado. I remember watching that game unfold where you're like, Colorado is just going to go in there. They're just going to smash this really bad Stanford team. And they were blowing them out. And then Stanford has the epic comeback on them. And that basically was the game that decided Colorado's season. After that game, they were a shell of their former selves, and they became less competitive after that game. They're like, wow, we're going to let Stanford come back on us. I feel like as long as they're competitive, they're going to be fine. I still think that them losing this week is even though it's North Dakota State, I still think Colorado's winning this game. But they just got to be competitive. They got to be. If they go in and they have a Stanford second half part 2 in any of these games, that's not going to be good. But I feel like Colorado's going to be better than that.
Well, if they lose that game, it's either because of turnovers, and that happens. That's the most unpredictable metric in sports, or it's because their line of scrimmage isn't improved enough to protect, to be able to get a running game going, all that stuff. So, I think that would be catastrophic for them to lose week 1. Similar to how I think if Florida loses week 1, like that's a massive blow to their chances of having a good season.
Yeah, it might be a massive blow, but you're talking about, it's not like they're playing against, a high school team. They're playing a team that is on the upswing, that has massively upgraded themselves this year. If you lose to Miami, that's not like you're losing to a scrub. So, I mean, I know you don't want to lose that game, especially with the in-state rival. I know how bad. I know that for you as a human being in your soul, Florida losing to Miami is going to be soul crushing. The kind of comments you're going to have to hear around town. You're going to have to like shut yourself off from everybody. But I don't think that if Florida loses to Miami, because on paper, Miami is probably winning that game. I know that Florida fans want them, but on the paper, I think Miami wins that game. I don't think that that's going to be the thing. Miami's whole schedule is Miami's problem. Miami's schedule is Florida's schedule is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in my life. I mean,
yeah,
I don't even understand how in the world their schedule actually exists, because if Florida can go through that schedule and be 10-2, 9-3 on that schedule, Florida's a playoff team. Florida makes the top
Guaranteed.
12.
Yeah, but
with that
that's
schedule,
just
yeah.
not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? 7 top 15 teams on that schedule right now?
8.
8.
So it's
incredible.
8 in the top 20 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
8 in the top 22 or something.
Completely the opposite of NC State. NC State has got a very winnable schedule this year. Doesn't mean they don't have good teams on there, but you look at the quality of opponent that NC State has. They were able to skirt by some of the ACC teams this year that are normally powerhouses, where Florida, I think they were just like, thank you, may I have another top 10 team on the schedule, please. Their schedule is just absurd.
Yeah, replace Vanderbilt with at Texas. No problem. Anyways, I hope you guys have some good luck this weekend. And shoot, if you have questions, we're here to help. Hit us up on Discord, on YouTube, whatever. Your support, etc., matters a ton, and we appreciate it. Looking forward to just enjoying some football this weekend.
Yeah, Nez83 and Big Red Fever, Brett Pagney, appreciate so much all the comments that you had there. If you're somebody that is in the CFB Dynasty Open League or CFB Dynasty Masters League, we look forward to having some fun with you guys, win or lose. As my late brother used to say, it's not about whether I win or lose the game. It's not about whether you win or lose the game. It's about whether I win or lose the game. I don't really believe that. It's about us having fun and competing and having fun as the year goes on. So let's get out there. Let's get your lineup set and let's have some fun. Make sure you like and subscribe and share this stuff out, and let's help build this community. Make sure you go up to Discord and comment there. BMAC, ready to get out of here?
Let's go.
Let's go. All right, we'll see you guys next time on the CFB Dynasty Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the CFB Dynasty Podcast. Help us out by subscribing on YouTube and reviewing us on your podcast network.